everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to tackle a skill that is honestly at the heart of almost every Python program out there, opening and reading files. This is the secret sauce behind how your favorite apps and games remember what you're doing. So let's jump right in. Just think about it for a second. How does a game know your high score when you come back the next day? Or when you tweak a setting in an app, how does it remember that choice forever? Well, the answer to all of that is file handling. It's the real magic that lets programs write down information and read it back later from a file on your computer. So, here's the game plan. First, we'll get into why this is all so important. Then, we'll get our hands dirty and open our very first file. After that, I'll show you the safest, most modern way to do it. We'll explore a few different ways to read data, figure out when to use each one, and then wrap it all up with a few key rules you'll want to remember. Okay, let's start with the big why. Simply put, file handling is what gives our programs a memory. Without it, everything would be forgotten the second you close the application. It's how they read, write, and manage data that needs to stick around, making them powerful and, actually useful. All right, now for the fun part. To do anything with a file, you first need a key to unlock it. And in Python, that key is a super handy built-in function called open. So what is open? Well, it's a function that you give a file name to, and in return, it gives you back something called a file object. The best way to think of this object is like a remote control for the file. It's got all the buttons or methods we need to read what's inside. It's our gateway to the data. In its simplest form, this is literally all you need to do. If your file, say demofile.txt, is sitting in the very same folder as your Python script, you just pass its name to open. We're storing that remote control in a variable we've called f, and now it's ready for our commands. But what happens if the file isn't in the same folder? Well, then you have to give Python the full address, the entire file path. And here's a classic gotcha to watch out for. The way you write that path changes depending on your operating system. Windows uses backslashes, which you often have to double up like this, while macOS and Linux use forward slashes. Getting this right is totally crucial. So now that we know how to open a file, let's talk about the best way to do it. There's an older way, sure, but then there's the modern, safer, and just all-around better way, using what's called the with statement. To really get why the with statement is so great, you gotta understand what can go wrong. See, when you open a file, your computer sets aside some resources to manage it. If you forget to tell it you're done by closing the file, those resources just stay tied up. It's kind of like leaving a tap running. Do it enough and you're gonna have problems. We call this a resource leak, and it can seriously slow down or even crash your program. And this right here shows the difference perfectly. On the left, that's the old way. You open the file, you do your thing, and then you have to remember to manually call f.close. It's easy to forget. But look at the right. The with statement is so much cleaner. You tell it to open the file, you do your work inside that block, and that's it. The moment your code is done, Python automatically closes the file for you. No f.close needed. So yeah, using with is just a non-negotiable best practice. It's like having an automatic self-closing door. It guarantees the file gets closed, which stops those nasty resource leaks. And here's the real game changer. It's exception safe. That means even if your code hits an error and crashes, the with statement still makes sure the file is closed properly. It's just the modern, professional way to do it. Okay, we've safely opened our file. Now for the good part. Let's actually look inside and explore the different ways we can read the contents. Our first tool is the .read method. If you just call f.read with nothing inside the parentheses, it'll just slurp up the entire file into one big string. But you can also give it a number like f.read5, and it'll read just that many characters. Now, why would you do that? Well, imagine your file is massive. We're talking gigabytes. Trying to read all of that at once could use up all your computer's memory. Reading it in smaller chunks is way more efficient. But what if you don't care about characters, you care about lines? Maybe you just want to process your file one line at a time. Well, for that, we have the .readline method. And, as the name suggests, every time you call it, it reads one single line from the file. So if you call readline once, you get line 1. Call it again, you get line 2. Python's smart enough to keep track of your spot. But you can probably see where this is going. What if your file has 1,000 lines? Or 1,000,000? Calling .readline over and over again is not going to be fun. There's got to be a better way, right? And of course, there is. This is what we call the Pythonic way of doing things. It's the most elegant, standard way to do it in Python.
Instead of all that, you can just loop directly over the file object itself. In each trip through the loop, the line variable automatically gets the next line from the file. This is not only super clean to read, it's also incredibly memory efficient because it only ever holds one line in memory at a time.
So we have .read, .readline, and a for loop. That's a nice little toolbox. Now, the real skill is knowing which tool to pull out for the right job.
Let's break it down. If you've got a small file, like a settings file, and you need it all at once, read is perfect. If you need to peek at just the first few characters of a file, maybe to check its type, then read N is your tool. But for almost everything else, especially big files, just looping line by line is the way to go. It's the safest, most efficient default choice.
Let's connect this to some real-world code. You'd absolutely use .read to grab all the settings from a small config file. But if you're processing massive server logs or analyzing a huge data file, you'd use a loop to go through it line by line. And if you just wanted to check the first few bytes of a file to see if it's, say, a JPEG image, .readN is the perfect tool for that quick check.
We have covered a ton of ground, so let's boil it all down to a final checklist of the most important rules you need to remember. Here are the 3 golden rules. 1, always, and I mean always, use the with statement. It's just safer and it takes care of the cleanup for you. 2, think before you read. Pick the right method, read, readline, or a loop for the size of your file and what you're trying to do. And 3, be mindful of memory. With big files, never try to read it all at once. Process it in smaller, manageable pieces. So, you now have a fundamental superpower in programming. You can make your programs save data, read settings, process huge amounts of information. You can build a to-do list that actually remembers your tasks, a game that saves your progress, or a tool that analyzes data. The only question left is, what are you going to build with it?